Hello, everybody, and good evening. Fast Tippy here. We will be looking at an Argent Arena game between Cat Scratch and Mix, and we'll talk about some concepts of safe play and taking advantage of a matchup. And so, in this matchup between Luke and Karin, the big advantage here is first of all, has to do with range. Karin can fight at range, where Luke has to use advancing, such as Chrono, to close up here. So this first beat, Luke is basically forced to drive forward. He could use shot, but more than likely he's going to use a drive, since most of his attacks, the majority of them, use an advancing move. And so in this first beat, I think it would have been wise for Karin to establish that range early with something like Coordinated Burst. Full Moon Drive is an excellent move, but the problem with Full Moon Drive is not a safe attack. And so when we talk about safe attacks, we need to talk about two concepts: highest speed and stun guard. When you're choosing attack, you should always consider what your opponent's highest speed is and what your opponent's potential damage is. If you are not faster than their highest speed, or if you don't have the stun guard to take the blow and attack back, you should probably consider another attack. This first beat of Chrono Drive versus Full Moon Drive showed that issue to its fullest, where Cat ended up being outsped, and because Full Moon Drive doesn't have stun guard, she got outsped, and basically Luke, or Mix in this case, got a free beat. As you'll see here in this beat, Luke played Strike. Strike has that stun guard, so even if Luke were to get hit here, he would be able to hit back. Now as it is, they clash on this beat and they switch. And so Mix is playing very safe attacks, either attacks that are faster, attacks that have the stun guard such as Strike, or he's dodging. This makes you somewhat predictable, but it also, he's playing in such a way that he's playing safe. Playing safe is one of the most important concepts in BattleCon, and it's really focusing on what your opponent's options are, and I would say what their maximum options are. So what is their maximum damage? What is their maximum speed? And then accounting for those in the best way possible by either saying, I want to outspeed him this beat, or I want to trade with the blow and trade back by having enough stun guard to prevent that. Karin is naturally a fast character, so Karin can fight in that vector where he outspeeds, but in this matchup between Karin and Luke, they're both fairly fast characters. So the vector that Karin can take advantage of in this matchup is actually her ability to fight at range. Throughout this match, I think Cat Scratch could have used Burst much more often to create distance and gaps between her and Luke. And then once those gaps and distances are created, it forces Luke to react by advancing. And when you know your opponent's forced to advance, then you can use your coordinated move to punish them to do it. As it is throughout most of this match, Cat Scratch chooses to stay close, kind of fight, face to face. And I think Karin's strength is her ability to threaten your opponent while being at a far distance. With moves such as Full Moon and Howling, you're able to threaten your opponent even when you're all the way on the other side of the board, and it forces your opponent to have less options to get to you. And then when your opponent is forced to do something like shot, then it's easy for you to outspeed them. So we're moving on to beat 4 here. Chrono Drive is a really good, in this case, Advanced 3 type drive. It has a really good board coverage, and even Burst can't get away from this. Cat Scratch plays Howling Claw, and we clash, and we'll see where this lands. We see Howling Drive. This is actually going to work out really well. Yeah, this will work out really well for Cat because their opponent can't get you within range, and you'll be able to hit him. Now, what this does do is corner Cat, which Mix is recognizing that Cat fights much less effectively up close, and so by forcing Cat into the corner, she's less effective. So I think at this point, you have two options. You could either dodge, or you could do a corner cross, which is to say, have a move that advances one at start and then into a burst. So that would be Feral Burst would be a good move here, because you would be able to go past your opponent and then burst away so that you have good distance between you and your opponent. Now your Mix in this case, I think, is afraid of something like a corner cross move, and so he does actually Fainting Dodge, which if his opponent was to do an advancing move like Feral Dodge, then Feral Burst, then this Fainting Dodge would have been allowed him to counter it. As it is, he just moves just out of range of Full Moon Grasp and continues to maintain this close combat position. As I said, Karin is a much better long-range fighter, and so Mix forces the issue by constantly staying up close. In addition, Cat has a tendency of moving Jaeger under the opponent, and in some cases this makes sense, and in other cases I think it makes sense for Jaeger to stay either behind or in front of them. It all, of course, depends on the options you have. And now at this point in the game, Cat starts to try to use coordinated, but the issue is, without having that range between her and Mix, Mix doesn't have the incentive to drive forward, and so coordinated is not going to be as useful. Saying that, Cat actually plays Dual Strike this turn, which would normally be okay, but with his opponent playing Memento, they're able to deal more damage than Strike has in Stun Guard. I don't know if there was a safe move, considering they burst this beat. Yeah, I mean, dodge would have been the perfect move, which is what Cat played, but because of the clash here, ended up being very painful. And that's another very important lesson from this game, is that clashing, especially now that dodge only has speed 3, is one of the best ways to actually beat your opponent's dodge. When you clash it, you're able to switch to a different move and often punish your opponent for not accounting for the clash. It is also a way to account for moves that will otherwise beat you or are otherwise very obvious. Something like when you're long range, your opponent's forced to do shot. Something like if you're playing someone like Elebor and you see Retribution Aegis coming or something like that. Looking for those opportunities to clash are extremely important when your opponent has a limited number of options. And like I said, we play coordinated shot here, but because your opponent is not forced to advance to you, coordinated is not really getting its full effect. So yeah, this game really just came down to a couple things. Karin wasn't trying to force the issue of range, which I think is her advantage in this match, and Karin also didn't account for the speed of their opponent. Luke is a fairly fast character, and so trying to outspeed Luke will not always end well. Often if you try to outspeed Luke, they can ante a time counter and outspeed you. Even though it might just be one more speed than you, one more is more than enough to outspeed you. So for that reason, you need to beat Luke by positioning, keeping him far away from you and you staying far away from him. And you also need to beat him through the use of trading with something like additional stun guard. Of course, trading is scary if your opponent has memento, but you know, that's why I think Kat could have had much more effective fight in this game if she would have forced the issue of range and used her full moon and howling much more often. So let's see, Luke is going for fusion burst. Burst is pretty scary against Karin because she has so many advanced 2s that often burst will just be ultra dead, which it is in this case as well. Yeah. I guess Karin could have switched. I guess it wouldn't have mattered. Perhaps having Luke, maybe switching at the beginning of this beat would have been better because it would have forced Luke to dodge into the corner instead of the center, and often the corner is better than center when you're trying to be so that you have more options to get away. Like I said, as much as possible you want to be positioning Luke in a position where you can get far away from him. So I think in that beat, if you would have switched, he would have gone in the corner and you might be able to get further away from him. As it is, because he is in the center, momentum drive ends up being a undodgeable full board attack. Yeah. Yep. And this was another example of not accounting for that maximum speed. It's hard with Luke because he can always get that +1 priority throughout the game. But yeah, you have to be very careful when picking attacks, so try to pick safe attacks. Of course, at this point in the game, when it's 11-3, it's very, very difficult to pick safe attacks, which is often why you're forced to do something like dodge, but that's just kind of how it goes. I hope you learn from this game, and as I did here, and I hope that by observing our own mistakes, we can learn to get better and become better at this game. I say myself, I learn a lot more from my losses and my victories, and I hope that as we watch these games, we can grow in understanding of not the fact that we lost, but why we lost, so that we can next time kick Luke in the face. All right, take it easy, everybody. Bye.